Welcome. It is Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable. Every week, I discuss the future of this incredible region blessed with hydrocarbon resources. We give time to reflecting on topics relevant to the development of the Niger-Delta and her people, because that is its richest resource. Now, today is no different as we're once again focusing on how to take this region to a more promising future. To remember, the program is sponsored by the operator of the NNPC SPDC Total Energies Ajib joint venture, the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, headquartered in Port Harcourt. Thank you for joining. I'm Adid Dayo, Ilushakin. The topic for this episode of the podcast: rights, equality, and empowerment for all women. International Women's Day, or IWD, is a holiday celebrated annually as a focal point in the women's rights movement. IWD gives focus to issues such as gender equality, reproductive rights, and violence and abuse against women. Spurred by the universal female suffrage movement, International Women's Day originated from a labor movement in Europe and North America during the early 20th century, with the modern holiday, March 8th, being declared by Vladimir Lenin. Now, throughout this episode, we'll be exploring the current state of women's rights, strides being made towards gender equality, and the inspiring stories of women who are leading the charge for empowerment in the Niger-Delta and beyond. And as we celebrate the achievement of women, it's also crucial to acknowledge the challenges that remain, from legal barriers to societal norms. Women continue to face obstacles that hinder their full participation in various aspects of life. By understanding these issues and working together, we can create a future where every woman has the opportunity to thrive and succeed. Again, on this episode, the topic on Canvas is rights, equality, and empowerment for all women. And my guest is Dr. Chioma Okpoechi. Dr. Chioma Okpoechi is Commercial Manager, Production and Logistics, SPDC. Chioma is a supply chain manager with over 28 years, or about 28 years, local and global experience. She has a track record of successful strategic and tactical leadership in end-to-end supply chain management for onshore and deepwater production, operations, maintenance, and turnarounds. And besides juggling all of these and other responsibilities, she's currently the president of the Shell Club here in Port Harcourt. Chioma, hi, and welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. I've had the pleasure of engaging you in different conversations at different times on a different subject matter, not on the podcast. And I dare say that every time I've always enjoyed conversing with you, and I have no doubts that we're going to have quite the conversation on the podcast as well.
Thank you.
Let's start this way. Well, by the time this episode will run, it will be about International Women's Day. Now, I've been a media person, a broadcast journalist for several years, and I've had cause to have conversations of this nature in the course of my work while I was on radio. And one thing I find, well, there are several things or different things that are synonymous with these conversations like this, especially in our climate. But one of those things is you find that when sub matters of women's rights, gender equality, all of those things come up in conversations, a lot of the male folk become apprehensive. Not all, I must say, but many. I think I can safely say many of the male folk become apprehensive somewhat. Do you know why? Because I'm not sure. Maybe I do have an idea, but I'd like to hear from you. Do you know why in our climate, when such conversations come up, as I imagine they will come up about this time as well, there's a lot of apprehension with a lot of the male folk.
So I think basically it will be because, when you talk about women's rights, people look at it from, a lot of people look at it from the angle of rebellion. When you talk about women's rights, it means oh, women don't want to be women anymore. They want to be men. They want to usurp the place of men. They want to leave their homes. They want to leave their children. They want to be men, And I think that maybe such thoughts or such perspectives are actually, or such mindsets are some of the things that creates that fear, that tension that you see amongst the menfolk.
What exactly is the place of men? I mean, you seem to have a better understanding of this than I do, and maybe for good reason, anyways. I mean, you're obviously more experienced than I am. When men think that way, or some of them, anyways, what is it that they consider to be their place that the women are trying to usurp?
So, generally, I think that when you look at our history and our culture, it's usually, I think, in my opinion, it's from the perspective of men as superior to women. And when a woman is saying, give me more opportunity, a lot of people consider it to be an affront to their manhood. When a woman, whether it's your wife, your sister, your neighbor, wherever, is asking, give me more, it's considered to be an affront. That's the way I think that many people look at it from. It's considered to be a deviation from normal.
Now, give me more, and I like that you use the word opportunity, not in the sense that, just give me handouts. We're speaking in the sense of give me opportunities. Now, from what I know over the years, studying, learning, whether in formal or informal, environments, I've learned that traditional African women, in days of yore, in days gone by, were an economic backbone of not just their immediate families, but even their communities as well. Not just the men went to the farms, the women were pivotal to even the economic success of the family as well. They went to the farms, they took care of the children, they made the food. So they were active, they had opportunities on the home front, well, which is expected of them traditionally, but they also had by default opportunities on the economic front as well, being an integral part of what went on in the farms, the harvesting of the produce, transporting them to the markets, selling them, and bringing the returns home. That sounds like a lot of opportunity by default being given to women. Why does that seem, fast forward decades or even maybe centuries after, why is that? Does that seem to be a problem now when a woman says, you know what, give me opportunities? Let me go to the farm. The farm now could be some multinational firm, could be some real estate firm, could be some office in the banking industry, and let me make an impact in the world. Let me harvest when I get my salary or my bonuses and bring it back home and help make the home front as well. Why is that how much is that different from what the traditional African woman did back then?
In my own perspective, or when I think about that, remember, like you mentioned, that at that time it was the farm. Everybody went to the farm. The man worked, the woman worked, they brought everything together. When the children were old enough, they contributed to the farm work, and everything was brought communally to the barn, and there was no issues. Over the years, in fact, I heard a story. I listened to someone some years ago, and the person spoke about what changed, some of the changes that came upon the world then. You had the World War. Men went to battle. When they went to battle, The women who were mostly at home had to get up and go to the factories where the men were working before. And then the women worked. And when the men came back from battle, the women had taken over. Lots of them were wounded. Lots lost their means of livelihood. Lots were angry. The women were taking over. And from what I see, from what I know, from what we see in society, when a man is not doing well and the woman is doing well, sometimes it's a sense, they have this sense of loss. They have this sense of, I'm not a man as I ought to be. So I think that it is the changes that have come along the way. I think it's the changes in the society, the evolvement of a modern society, and the fact that the skills and that we need to survive in the modern society goes beyond what is exclusive for men and what is exclusive for women. So that's what I think that has been the cause of this conflict right now.
I'd like to remind, not you, but the viewer or listener to this podcast, our focus is centered on women's rights, as this conversation is more or less centered around International Women's Day. That said, speaking of women's rights, what is your perception of the current state of women's rights, first globally and then locally? And you might even want to narrow down to the Niger-Delta specifically.
I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's complex and mixed, In many instances, there's been a lot of progress. And then also there's been challenges, there have been setbacks. Globally, in terms of progress, of course, we're seeing that many countries are enacting legislations that protect women from domestic violence. You also see that in terms of education, more and more young girls are going to school more than before. You also see in terms of leadership, empowerment, more and more women are being employed in the workplace. More and more women are becoming entrepreneurs. In healthcare, you also see that there's quite a lot of traction in that space. More and more women, especially in the rural areas, are accessing more, better quality healthcare. We see the proliferation of HMOs by many organizations that caters not just to the worker, but then also to the family members. So there's been real progress in so many areas, But then also there's been setbacks too. There are areas where much progress is not being made, where more needs to be done. So like I said, what is happening globally is also happening locally. So you see that in terms of education, especially here in the Niger-Delta, there is more and more advocacy, more and more activism for girls to go to school. We see lots of, healthcare provision, especially against awareness against the diseases that, normally afflict women. So more and more women are becoming aware and taking charge of their health. But then, like I said, there are still areas that, need more focus and attention. Domestic violence is still very much prevalent. You read a lot in the news media. You also see that there is also a great need for women to have a voice, especially in things that pertain to women, whether it's representation within local government committees and the government committees that deal with issues that affect women. I think women should be in a much more better place to know what another woman is going through and some of the things that we need to do to be able to lift women out of where they are. So it's a mixed grill. Progress in some areas, setback, challenges, still prevailing. Yeah.
When you talk women's rights, I mean, such conversations have certain lexes associated with it, terms that are commonly used in such discussions. One of such expressions is gender equality. In some quarters, it puts smiles on people's faces like it's doing on yours right now.
Big smile.
On others, it raises a lot of dust for reasons best known to them. Some people maybe don't even have a good understanding of what gender equality actually means. Some might. What does gender equality mean? What does it mean to you? And there are those who have advocated that for any society to develop meaningfully, gender equality is key. So, first, what is gender equality? And how crucial or how key is it to the development of any society?
Thank you, Dayo. This is my view, Chioma Okpoechi's view about gender equality and my understanding of women's rights. So there's a book I read, and there I understand that God made man and woman, and God gave them rights. And when he gave them rights, he gave them those rights as man and woman together. It's the principle on which I live and I operate in. It's the foundation of my belief and my right to be Chioma, to be, to live, to breathe, to do. And from, because everybody, an individual, I don't care who you are, you must have a belief system. And it's those belief systems that, defines your philosophy. And it's that philosophy that defines your personal leadership. And I saw, and that's where I take my power, my strength as a human being, irrespective of where I find myself. It's about the right to be fruitful. It's about the right to multiply. It's about the right to replenish. It's about the right to dominate. It's something that is given to all of us. So women's right is a right to be, just to be. You have a nose, you can breathe. You should breathe. You have legs to walk. You can walk. You should walk. You have the power to reason. You can reason. You should reason. If you didn't have legs, then you're not supposed to walk. If you didn't have hands, then you're not supposed to do. If you didn't have brains, then you're not supposed to think. I think every one of us was made by a creator. And I think that if he didn't want anything, he didn't want you to be anything. After all, I don't have physical wings, so why should I fly? Wings are given to people who should fly. So for me, first of all, from my personal perspective about women's rights, that's what it is, the right to be. And I teach it to my children, whether the boy or the girl. It's the right to be. You have the right to be. You were made to be. You were made to thrive. So if we draw from there, from that analogy, and then you take it further into the way women's rights are defined globally, it's the right to be. Live and let live. It's the right to thrive. It's the right to be happy. It's the right to grow. It's the right to explore. In the words of the Gen Zs, it's the right to blow. So that's how I consider, a woman should be allowed to be happy, to thrive, to explore her talents. And I think that if everybody recognizes this, the way parents recognize their children, you see men, women proud of their daughters, that you can be anything you want to be. You see men boasting, I'm not going to spare any expense. Whatever school you want to go, I want you to go to that school. I want you to be. And if they were not meant to be, there would have been a mental limitation, physical limitation. But no. So for me, this is what women's rights is all about. It's not about somebody and it's not about asking to be, suddenly I don't want to be a woman, I want to be a man. I don't want to be a man. I would never, ever want to be a man. I want to be me, and I'm me. And it's just the ability to make use of all the internal and external resources that have been given to me and provided for me in the environment where I am to be the best that I can be. So, so if we want to get into the terminologies around the legal rights, the rights to bear children or not to bear children, the rights to go to school or not to go, those things are they are an extension of this. It's just the right to be you. That's, in my own opinion, what human rights, a woman's right is.
Once again, there are those who advocate that gender equality is key for any society to develop properly and function properly as well. What is the connection between gender equality and a society developing properly?
So let's look at generally right now, women constitute almost half of the entire global population. And somehow, I've not done a census before. When you look at data and figure, available, you find out that in many places it's generally adjudged that women are almost half of the population, whether in this country, so generally half the population in most places, are women. And when you look at the population from a workforce point of view, you have 40% or 45% or, that kind of percentage of your workforce dormant there. It doesn't take much to understand that you're leaving half of your ability to grow as a nation, as individual, as a community, as a family, as a state, as an organization. It doesn't, you don't need to think deeply to see that, you're leaving value on the table, you're leaving opportunities on the table when 50% of your population is not employed or cannot contribute. That's the way I want to look at it. So if your workforce, if you take advantage of the workforce, of the human resources that you have been given and you put it to work, you don't need to go very far to look at the exponential benefits that come from that. That's the way I would look at that.
What, in your estimation, are the most significant challenges that women face in accessing their rights, or to borrow your expression, in being able to be?
Not too long ago, less than 2 weeks ago, I was somewhere and I spoke. And when I came back to my room at the hotel reception, when I was going back to my room that same day, I met this guy. He came from one of the African countries. And he saw me on the reception and he said, "Oh, you were the lady that was speaking." I said, "Yes." He said, "You're looking for my trouble." I'm paraphrasing. I said, "What trouble am I looking for?" He said, "You're encroaching into my space and we will not allow, we will not allow you people have your place." And I wanted to ask him what that place was, but he was already moving on to other things. So things like that, mindsets like that. And I thought about him, and I thought about such a person being the leader of an organization or being the leader of a community or a committee. And I really thought about, what that community or what those group of people or what that society would be like. So mindsets like that can be limiting. I wanted to have a conversation with him, and I wanted to ask him perhaps, about his children, whether he had children. I wanted to find out. I really wanted to explore his mindset, and I really wanted to find out what was making him think that way. But then that is an example that, of maybe, some of the mindset you have around. So there are other things for example, not you're talking about things that limit,
Yeah.
yes. So a lot of women also have been in places, a lot of women have suffered trauma, stress, failures, abuse in time past that have caused them to question their ability to be. A lot of women have been abused and have have lost their sense of self-worth. Some feel that they don't even deserve to be. And a lot of them are in societies where they're not even considered in the allocation of resources when decisions are being made. A lot are in societies, you get to the news and you read about some societies where women are raped and left for dead. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. So these are just some of the, a lot of places where somebody suffers domestic violence and the person deserves it. Deserves it. So, I mean, we could go on and on. So, but for mindset can be one of the biggest challenges.
Pardon me, but I'm kind of intrigued by that experience you just narrated. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, with all, and this was a recent incident.
2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Wow, that's remarkable, really. I mean, with your years of experience, your expertise, your ingenuity, your capacity proven beyond doubt, you still experience things like that. I find that quite remarkable, really. As someone would say to you to know your place.
No, I don't have people, directly coming to me to tell me to know my place, And I'm sure a lot of people who are privileged to be educated, not have people directly calling them or calling them to know their place. Indirectly.
Yeah, I mean, directly or indirectly, the messaging is clear. I mean, and that's the point of it. And I find that it's quite something, really. Um, I'm sure that in your experience, professionally and otherwise over the years, you've also come across instances where uh, gender equality, women's rights are celebrated and are put in the forefront. And this has resulted in measurable progress because people identified, like you were saying a while ago, when you consider certain data and indices, it doesn't take a lot to understand and realize that if you incorporate the female gender, we can accomplish a lot more and succeed and do, so much more. Um, do you know of any such instance where people have thought this way and it has resulted in measurable progress when we identify with and promote women's rights?
So much. I'm just trying to quickly think of a particular example. First of all, in the company where I work, promoting gender equality or even gender equity is seen as a global business priority in the sense that the company knows that innovation can only happen when you bring all perspectives, all views on the table. When you I think it was today we were having a conversation earlier where somebody was saying something about I mean, when you look at a situation from multiple dimensions, something like that. I can't remember the word he used exactly to describe that. So where you have organizations like the one, like Shell, looking at gender equity, gender equality as a business priority, where they know that innovation can only come from having all the voices on the table, hearing all the perspectives on the table and then making a choice, a business choice or decisions. Our organization realizes the business benefits and the economic benefits and the performance benefits that comes from that. I just like to use that example.
All right. It is Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, and we're discussing the rights of women. It is at about the time this podcast is airing, it's International Women's Day, and it's a very important subject matter at this time and every time also. However, we have to go for a break now. We will return shortly. The conversation will continue. Please stay with us.
Our yellow and black markers indicate pipeline and flow line right-of-way boundaries. Your activity could impact on the buried high-pressure hydrocarbon pipelines and flow lines, leading to possible leaks and explosion. Please keep off. Do not engage in sand mining or any form of excavation, pipeline vandalism, oil theft, and bush burning within pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Do not farm, trade, or locate any business on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. It is against the law to apportion land, sell, or build on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Maintain a setback distance of at least 30 meters or about 100 feet from the right-of-way boundaries always. We care for your safety and that of the environment.
This message is brought to you by the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, SPDC, operator of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, Total Energies, and Ajib Joint Venture.
Hello and welcome back. It is Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable. I'm Dio, and we're discussing a very important matter, as all the other important matters we discuss on the podcast, the matter of women's rights. It's about International Women's Day, about this time right now. And my guest understands the significance and importance of this, and that's why she's here today. Dr. Chioma Okpoechi, you're welcome once again.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us as well. Once again, I'd like for you to share, and this part of the conversation, I'll be asking you to share a lot of your own personal experiences and stories, and I'm sure you don't mind that. That's why you're here as well today. You've had quite a journey, and I'm sure in that journey of your life, there are several other journeys, that have all been connected or linked in some way in order to make for this one maiden journey that you're still on. Can you share a personal story or personal journey or personal experience of what empowerment means to you? How it's impacted either you or somebody else that you know? How empowering a woman can create such, do I even say, a cataclysmic impact, and that might even have reverberating effect or multiply effect as well in achieving remarkable successes?
Thank you, Dio. So I think that when you talk about empowerment, you're talking about giving power. The word power is the dominant force within that word empowerment, to give power. So what gives you power? And for me personally, like I was saying, somewhere earlier on, before I even knew what the word empowerment was, I think growing up, my life in so many ways and who I am today was basically framed by my parents. At least I'm talking about physically, in terms of, what my mom instilled in us, growing up, or instilled in me growing up. She made sure we went to school. So education, very vital. She was a school teacher, from a school teacher to a headmistress in an army school for 32 years. So she instilled that discipline of schooling, all of us. She taught us in the afternoons after school. She prepared us for exams. In our own time, there were federal government colleges then that were the best secondary schools around then. She made us prepare for those entrance examinations and pass them. She and my father ensured that we lacked nothing when it came to education. And then going to the universities, and then coming out with the best grades. And then, time and time over again, she told us that if For example, in marriage, you said if you want your husband to live long, work, make sure you're earning, make sure you're doing something, make sure that you are contributing. And then that means that you don't leave him to bear in a society like ours that says the man must do everything. You don't leave him to do everything. You can help, you can support, you can do anything that you want to do. You can help anybody that you want to help. And then you can take care of yourself, if you are empowered. And by empowerment, then she meant you must do something. So in terms of my journey, on empowerment, my personal journey, I think it was all about education. So you can talk about the education, academic education. You can also talk about the spiritual and the mental education. When you are aware, then you are very much aware of the things the provisions that have been made for you to thrive and the opportunities that are before you. Now, that awareness, that educational awareness leads to the other part of empowerment, which is financial empowerment. And I saw that my education was what also opened the door for me to be able to seek employment and to be able to get noticed by an organization like mine. So, education, very key. And it was education that exposed me and gave me access to economic empowerment. Now, there are some people where they are now. Maybe people did not have the opportunity for formal education at at certain points in their lives, certain women, but they are where they are now. If we begin also to create opportunities to empower those women, whether it's in learning a new skill, or whether it's in trading, or whether it's giving them access to farm and give them opportunities to begin to contribute meaningfully. I think those are the two key catalysts for empowerment. For me, it was education. And I've mentioned earlier the education or academic education, and then also the education of the inner man. Those things have made me aware of the resources and the opportunities that can be available for me. And it was that education that now just led me into my current job and also empowered me economically.
But by the way, I should mention, my mom was also a teacher for several years, also in an army school, the Armed Forces Resettlement Center in Oshodi in Lagos.
Oh, wow. Wow, awesome.
You went to a federal government college?
Yes, I did.
I also did.
Oh, wow.
Which one?
Many things in common.
Which one did you go to?
I started in Federal Government Girls College, Boko,
Okay.
and then I ended up in Federal Government College, Enugu.
Oh, okay. I went to Federal Government College, Ogumosho.
Oh, wow. Pro-unitated.
Absolutely. So, you've had obstacles. You've had to deal with challenges, no doubt. I mean, what's an interest in life without some ups and downs every now and then? They make for an interesting story, I suppose. What are some of the challenges that you've had to contend with in your journey of empowerment, of leadership, being, living your and actualizing your rights, and how did you overcome them?
So I think there are many, for me personally, sometimes self-doubt, fear of failure, self-doubt. Those were some of the biggest fears. So, I made quite some errors. I made quite some mistakes in sometime my secondary school, especially towards my final year. I took a few things for granted. When you're in primary school, you don't do much reading, you take exams, you pass.
Mhm.
So when I got to secondary school, I didn't really read as much as I should read. And eventually, I didn't pass my JAMB. I didn't make my JAMB score. I didn't do what I intended to do, what I would have loved to do. So that was my first wake-up call. And I really doubted if I could be anything. My mother encouraged me. I mean, I learned that lesson. I didn't need anybody to teach me again. So I tried it again. I spent hours reading. I went to do A-levels. And at the same time, I took JAMB again. Now, self-doubt made me not to aim as high. Rather than go back then, I mean, the professional courses like law, engineering, medicine, were the places to be. I aimed low. And I'm not saying, I mean, for my viewers, I'm not saying that what I eventually read, I'm a graduate of geography. I mean, I'm here, I'm where I am today, but I'm talking about the mindset that we had there. I said, let me not aim high. Maybe if I aimed high, I might not get it. So that was one of the first, setbacks I faced. I went and applied for geography in JAMB. Of course, I got it. And of course, I was up there on the list, and I made it. And even after reading geography, one day, I kept hearing people asking my mom. In those days, when you ask your, what's your child reading in the university? Say geography. Joe, what? What's geography? And, the fact that I was studying geography in the university, and the fact that it wasn't law, and the fact that the society only regarded people who read law, who read, some of the professional courses were, really the people who were going to make it in life.
Medicine and surgery.
Yes. I also had this self-doubt about what I could be. But you see, over time, and with that resilience of if you fail, try again, I took the Shell aptitude test. Passed it. And the rest is history. This is where I am today.
A graduate of geography.
Yes, I'm a graduate of geography.
No, I mean, I must add, at the time, a graduate of geography took the Shell aptitude test.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Just mentioning that.
Yes. So, so sometimes self-doubt. And, sometimes people can look down on you. I mean, there's been many instances where people feel, several, where you've been looked down on, and that you're not fit for certain opportunities and all that. It can create self-doubt. Sometimes fear of failure, sometimes fear of rejection, can actually, there are certain different instances where I have feared failure, or I had feared being rejected, in certain have limited me, from really pushing forward and going for what I want. So those are some of the things that can hinder, that have hindered me. But in terms of other aspects.
Talking about being fit, I asked you a while ago about empowerment. You mentioned education. You mentioned how that broadened your horizon and helped to create financial opportunities and empowerment for yourself as well. How have these the education and economic opportunities you've had? What roles have they played in your empowerment and in your progress in life? And I ask that against this context, this background. In our society, culturally, the woman shouldn't be seen to be aiming too high. Women should not have to or possess too much. Once a woman starts owning her own house, buying her own house, find a single girl driving her own car, what's that supposed to mean? Can she listen to a man? Will she be able to live with a man? She's progressing too fast in life. It's not a bad thing. And how have these impacted you personally? And can a woman have all of that and still have everything else, whatever else everything else constitutes?
So let me say first of all that for me, like I said, my parents were very, very instrumental and key to, and my faith, to my outlook in life. But let me say something that, when you bring 20,000 naira and keep it on the table here right now, there is nothing from that 20,000 naira. I mean, looking at 20,000 naira, there is nothing that tells you whether this 20,000 naira was earned by a man or woman. I found out that empowerment gave me wings to fly, gave me wings to impact my family, my siblings, to help my father and mother in ways that, had no gender definition to it. So whether people choose to flaunt their economic powers or look at their economic empowerment as a means of being rebellious, that's individual, that's their business. But I see economic empowerment as an opportunity to change the world, one person at a time. And many years ago, when I joined, when I was a new joiner, in Shell, I learned something about the word sustainability. It's not left me till today. I'm sure I've mentioned it to you before. It was about, when we came in, Shell taught us about sustainability. It was about living our lives in such a way that we leave something for the next generation. I saw also that as human beings, we could be the wheel within a wheel. We begin to turn in such a way that we create power for the outer wheel to begin to turn. What do I mean by that? I found out that I could influence, I could help, I could support. And those supports did not, it didn't have a gender face. It didn't matter. A woman can't come and provide opportunities for people in a certain community, and they tell them, oh, no, don't receive the money because it's a woman that's giving the money. It's never happened. It's never happened. So I think a lot of times it's all about how people carry themselves. Of course, there are different kinds of people. So there are some people that you give 200,000 naira right now and they'll go mad on the streets, But some other people, you give that amount of money and they will conduct themselves. So the scenario about, women who are empowered become rebellious or become this and that it's just a generalization. It's not exactly true. There are women who are moving mountains. They're not in the news. They're doing things. Yeah.
Speaking of women moving mountains, what advice do you have for women who are looking to make a difference, an impact in their communities?
Don't be satisfied with the status quo. Yesterday, I was so moved. I was talking to somebody, and she told me how she was raped at 14. I've been, relating with this lady for years. She told me how she was raped at 14, by her neighbor. She had a baby at 14. She in fact, she didn't even know she was pregnant, and she had a baby at 14. And the baby had to stay with her mother. And she was living in the village somewhere far, far deep within the Niger-Delta and working in the farms. And she said, how can I work there? How can I give a life to this baby? And she insisted she would come to Port Harcourt. She came to Port Harcourt, cold turkey. And today, fast forward, she has made a life for herself. She has 2 other children. They had graduated. Because, each time I found myself always asking her, she's a widow. Found myself always asking her about the progress of her children. She sent her children to school, and today they have graduated with the little job that she's doing. I want to tell every young girl, I want to tell every old girl, I want to tell every woman out there, don't be satisfied with the status quo. Don't say because you didn't go to the university, your life is over. Because you didn't have an academic degree, you can't be anything. You can't be something. I also want to say to the women out there who are, wherever you find yourself, there is something that you can do for the little girl or for the little, near you. You can teach, if you're a teacher, you can organize lessons, you can do those things pro bono. You can take the opportunity to mentor young girls. For the ones who have created support groups for widows, I have somebody also who gave me a throw pillow. That throw pillow was made by a certain woman who had a burden for women who were coming out of prison. And, she kept going to the prison, and then she kept checking, the women who were being released, whose time was up, and she was inviting them to her sitting room, and she was teaching them to sew and to embroider. And I have a gift of a throw pillow that was made by these women. And they opened a little shop where they sell the proceeds from there. They became a support group to each other, empowering themselves and healing in the process and gaining confidence that, the fact that they have gone to prison, the fact that they have made mistakes in time past is not the end of life. I was in an event in January, and a lady in one of the groups I mentored, was talking about how she had left the workforce to have a baby, and she was feeling so, she felt that she was no longer good. She felt that she might no longer be able to grow in life. She felt that she might no longer be able to add value and all that because she has had a baby. And I said to her, having a baby is not a crime. It's what you are built for. You are built for it. So it's not a crime. But we can work together, and we can share. And whatever time I have, I'm willing to give it to you. We can discover yourself. There's so much in you, and it needs expression. And it's all about, as a fellow woman, encouraging other women to comfort you. There's so much. She wants to contribute. She wants to be able to help out at home. She wants to be able to support her husband, to give the quality of education they want for their children. She wants to be able to support her family. She wants to be able to do things in her community, and she needs that empowerment. So I want to tell young girl, old woman, wherever you are, don't be satisfied with the status quo. There's still a lot that you can do.
There's still a lot that you can do. On that note, to wrap up this episode of Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, we have discussed equality, opportunities, fairness, equity for women. This conversation has been in commemoration of this year's International Women's Day, which I think is in about 2 weeks from the recording of this episode right now. Thanks to my guest, Dr. Chioma Okpoechi. I did say at the start that there was going to be an interesting conversation. I know that it truly has lived up to the expectation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And even though we have about a fortnight to go, well, happy International Women's Day.
Thank you. In advance.
In advance.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for being a part of this as well. Remember, there's so much you can do. Do not get stuck with the status quo. Break that barrier. I'm Adedayo Ilushakin. Bye for now.